On December 7, 1972, Apollo 17 lifted off from Kennedy Space Center as NASA's final crewed mission to the moon. It was supposed to be the clean ending of the Apollo era. One last Saturn V, one last lunar landing, one last chance to collect moon rocks before humans stopped walking on another world. But inside the technical air-to-ground transcript, there are a few strange moments that still feel uncomfortable more than 50 years later. The crew reported bright objects outside the spacecraft, strange tumbling fragments, and a sudden flash near the lunar surface. Decades later, those short comments became connected to one question. Did Apollo 17 simply capture ordinary space debris, or did the final moon mission record something that was never fully explained? The crew of Apollo 17 was not made of people who would panic over a light in the window. Eugene Cernan was a commander, Ronald Evans was a command module pilot, and Harrison Schmitt was a lunar module pilot. Schmitt was especially important because he was a professional geologist, trained to observe surfaces, shapes, patterns, and unusual details. These were not random passengers looking through an airplane window. They were technical observers inside one of the most expensive scientific machines ever built. So when their transcript includes strange visual reports, the details matter. The first important point is that space is not empty in the way most people imagine. Around a spacecraft, there can be ice crystals, vented gases, flakes of paint, insulation particles, bits of hardware, and reflections from windows or camera systems. In sunlight, even a tiny object can look shockingly bright. A small particle close to the spacecraft can appear like a distant object if there is no reference point behind it. This is one of the hardest parts of understanding Apollo-era UFO claims. A bright dot in space does not automatically mean a large object far away. It can also mean a tiny object very close to the window. In the Apollo 17 transcript, Ronald Evans reported seeing bright particles or fragments drifting by while the spacecraft was maneuvering. That timing is important. When a spacecraft changes orientation, vents, moves, or experiences small thermal changes, loose particles can become visible. Mission crews had seen this kind of thing before. The Apollo spacecraft was not a sealed magical sphere moving through perfect darkness. It was a working machine, and machines leave traces around themselves. But the Apollo 17 report became more interesting because the crew did not describe only one dull speck. They talked about multiple bright things, some big enough and bright enough to catch their attention. Harrison Schmitt then described a whole group of bright objects near his window. He compared the sight to 4th of July fireworks. That comparison is a line that made the case spread so quickly after the new UAP release brought attention back to it. It creates an instant picture in the mind. Astronauts near the moon watching bright flashes outside the spacecraft. But the transcript also includes a less mysterious clue. The crew described some of the objects as jagged, angular fragments that were tumbling. That sounds less like a smooth control vehicle and more like broken or loose material rotating in sunlight. This is where the mystery becomes more realistic and more interesting. The best version of the Apollo 17 case is not a cartoon alien story. It is a technical puzzle. If the objects were fragments, where did they come from? Were they ice from the spacecraft? Were they pieces of paint or insulation? Were they related to the spacecraft's earlier separation events? Were they close to the window or farther away in space? The transcript suggests that the astronauts themselves were thinking in practical terms. They discuss possible ordinary explanations instead of jumping to dramatic conclusions. One possible explanation is ice. Spacecraft release water vapor and other material, and in the cold environment of space, tiny ice particles can form or break loose. These particles can drift, tumble, and shine brightly when sunlight hits them. To a camera or human eye, they can look like moving lights. Another possibility is paint or insulation flakes. During launch, separation, thermal stress, or maneuvers, small pieces can detach from spacecraft surfaces. If they rotate, they can flash again and again because each turn changes the angle of reflection. That can make a simple fragment look like something pulsing with its own light. But not every part of the Apollo 17 mystery fits neatly into one category. The most famous visual idea connected to this case is a triangle. 3 bright points appearing above the moon, arranged in a shape that looks intentional. People see 3 lights, connect them instantly, and imagine a triangular craft. This is a very human reaction. Our brains are built to find patterns quickly. 3 dots become a triangle. A triangle becomes a structure. A structure becomes a vehicle. But scientifically, 3 bright points arranged in a triangle do not prove that one solid triangular object was there. They only prove that, from that camera angle or image, 3 bright points appeared in that pattern. That distinction matters because space photography is full of traps. A camera can compress distance. One particle may be close to the lens, another may be farther away, and another may be an artifact or reflection. In the final image, they can appear connected even if they are unrelated. The moon also creates extreme contrast. Its sunlit surface is bright, its sky is black, and there is no atmosphere to soften the light. That harsh environment makes small image defects, dust, reflections, or bright particles look more dramatic than they would on Earth. Still, the triangle image is powerful because it creates a clean mystery. It is not messy like a transcript full of technical chatter. It is visual, simple, and easy to share. 3 lights above the moon feel like evidence, even when the actual explanation is uncertain. This is why the Apollo 17 case keeps coming back. It has enough real documentation to avoid being pure internet fiction, but enough uncertainty to keep people arguing. The flash near Grimaldi is another part of the case, and it may be the most scientifically interesting. Grimaldi is a large crater region near the moon's western limb. During the mission, Harrison Schmitt reported seeing a bright flash near that area. He did not immediately treat it as an alien signal or spacecraft. He suggested that it might be worth checking seismic data because a small impact could create a visible flash. That reaction tells us something important about how trained observers think. Schmitt saw something unusual, but he tried to connect it to a physical process. A lunar impact flash is a real possibility. The moon has almost no atmosphere, so small meteoroids can strike its surface directly at high speed. When they hit, they can release energy as heat and light. From a spacecraft or a telescope, that can appear as a short flash. Today, astronomers do monitor the moon for impact flashes, especially during meteor showers. So the Grimaldi flash does not need an exotic explanation to be interesting. A natural impact on the moon, witnessed during the final Apollo mission, would already be remarkable. The problem is proof. A single reported flash is difficult to confirm unless there is matching data from instruments, images, or independent observations. That is why the Grimaldi moment remains open. It is not strong evidence of aliens, but it is also not meaningless. It is a real observation from a trained astronaut during a real mission. The most honest answer is that it may have been a lunar impact or another lighting effect. But we cannot treat the transcript alone as a complete solution. This is the key to the Apollo 17 Triangle Lights mystery. It is not one event. It is several strange observations grouped together. There were bright, drifting particles near the spacecraft. There were jagged, tumbling fragments. There was a triangle-like arrangement of bright points in imagery. There was a flash near the lunar surface. Each part may have a different explanation. Some may be spacecraft debris. Some may be camera or lighting artifacts. Some may be natural lunar events. The mistake is forcing all of them into one answer. If someone wants to say, it was definitely aliens, the evidence is not strong enough. The transcript does not show the crew identifying control craft. It shows them describing bright things and discussing possible explanations. But if someone wants to say, there is nothing interesting here at all, that is also too lazy. These were real mission records from the final Apollo landing. The astronauts were seeing and reporting things in one of the strangest environments humans have ever entered. That deserves careful attention. The reason this case became louder in 2026 is the wider release of UAP-related files. When old Apollo material is placed inside a modern UFO file collection, people read it differently. A line that once sounded like technical mission chatter suddenly feels like hidden evidence. A bright particle becomes a UFO. A flash becomes a signal. 3 dots become a triangle craft. The document did not necessarily change, but the frame around it changed. And framing is powerful. This is also why NASA and space agencies face a difficult problem with public trust. When they explain sightings as debris, ice, or reflections, many people feel like they are being dismissed. But in spaceflight, those explanations are not weak excuses. They are common realities. Astronauts have repeatedly seen particles, flashes, and strange visual effects that later turned out to be connected to spacecraft operations or the space environment. The problem is that ordinary space physics can look extraordinary. Imagine sitting inside Apollo 17, far from Earth, looking through a window at the black sky and the bright moon. There is no air outside. There are no clouds. There are no birds, planes, or city lights. Every point of light feels important because the environment is so empty. Then several bright fragments drift by, rotating and flashing as sunlight hits them. Without depth, without scale, and without a clear background, your eyes cannot easily tell whether they're inches away or miles away. That is the strange visual world of space. The Apollo 17 crew did what trained astronauts are supposed to do. They reported what they saw, discussed it with mission control, considered possible causes, and continued the mission. They did not stop the flight. They did not declare contact with another civilization. They treated the unknown as something to be observed, not worshipped. That is why the transcript is valuable. It shows real uncertainty without turning uncertainty into fantasy. The Triangle Lights mystery survives because it sits between explanation and imagination. The spacecraft debris explanation is strong for